Oh, okay, response video to Fred. I believe it's functioning, yes. So I took notes, because obviously he did I like that he did a response video where he actually played my video. I think it's good. And obviously that gets into an hour and a half, and I can't do a 6-hour video. So I will reduce it back to a paraphrase. And through notes that I can't really read, but the general idea of his video, context, I've only watched a third of it, but the flavor of it is, it is about language, substantially, and how we use language, and to communicate, we flawed language because we don't have the words, because the language, in my opinion, is archaic, and so it's flawed, it's broken, it has words that don't have a reality, a real meaning, like the word free. Like I said, part of this free will argument is derailed by the very concept of freeness itself, because we talk about a free will as if it is a higher will, and no, the dumber you are, the freer you are. The more refined and educated your will, the more unfree you are. Because then you can understand concepts like responsibility, accountability, impact, all of that dynamic is understood, and now you are limited in what you can get away with without calling yourself on it. So it's sort of an irony of this conversation is that people are striving for this concept of free will, or wishing to cling to it, when it is essentially the only thing that could possibly be free is dumb, or retarded, or broken, or error-filled will. It's the only will that could be free, if there was any concept of free. So that's part of the irony. Alright, so now let's talk about this E prime thing, which is defending. And my problem with this, you are arguing that this is more explicit to talk about our instrument panel and talk about it and what it senses. And I'm just saying, I don't think that's scientific. When we talk about something, we don't say, the instrument, who it was made by, what employee inspected the instrument that made the detection. We don't qualify it because we know it's kind of reliable. What we know about humans as an instrument is they're incredibly unreliable. And so it's totally, not irrelevant, but useless to talk about what we're perceiving. Let's talk about what we know it to be, what we have confirmed it as. So if you're going to say the grass is green, and instead you're going to say the grass seems green to me, I would argue the better approach is, let's talk about what it seems to you. Let's talk about the fact that the color of the grass is reflected light. And then we can talk about what color or frequency the light being produced is. Because we know that, we've confirmed that the greenness isn't just a function of our brain didn't just make it up. It is how it's interpreting a reality, a real phenomenon, a real difference between a frequency of light. There are different light frequencies, and therefore that's the reality. So the distinction of green or blue or red is perfectly valid, and is not devaluated or delegitimized because our brain, the specific register, is subjective. All right, the fact that there's a difference is true. The fact that what exactly the difference is, red, green, or blue, is irrelevant, as long as you know that they're relative differences. And using a color spectrum is adequate to the purpose of defining that relativity. It might even be better if our description, our words, say if our words weren't broken, our vocabulary, it might be nice for our words to describe colors based on their redness or blueness. Two extremes of the spectrum, from infrared to ultraviolet. And was able to qualify a color based on where it would lie on that spectrum. But unfortunately, the colors themselves are made of a mixture of light, which sort of breaks that idea. But even if our colors described the mixture, like when you did say puce or something, instead you said P4060, because it was 40% one thing and 30% something else with the primary colors, that would be a more useful language. It would have more function. So yeah, a big part of what we're disagreeing about is language. And you seem to like this language I despise, which is human-centric, human-focused, human experientially, phenomenology oriented, and you're implying that there's something scientific about still doing the I see it this way language rather than it is verified that language. So I don't see E prime as a scientific language. So if you want to do E scientific, then we got somewhere to go. Something that turns the camera away from or contextualizes the human. So it does put the camera over there. So it's almost like the conversation about you wanting me to acknowledge you as a Fred, in some personal way, like you said when I'm making a video. Well, no, I'm not making the video for a reader that's you. I'm making the video to those over there, okay, and I'm explaining the context of me and you, the relationship between what we're saying to them. So that's the audience I'm talking to, are those people. So you have to be a Fred in my conversation. You can't be you fella or whatever you would like, a more personal endearment. Well, I think Fred is that bad in the third person, but it doesn't matter. But that's something you would notice, something I wouldn't, because we have that different perspective bent in terms of how we do color things. I'm hungry for something more grounded and earthly, and I think you're hungry for something a little more aesthetic, wafty, blendy. Even where I left off, you just made a point like, come on, lighten up. And it's just like, oh man, do I hate that kind of crap. Everything about what I have learned in my existence on this planet is that human assholes have to seriously unlighten up. They are way too fucking light. They're way too la-di-da, tulip dancing bullshit. And that's why this place is a shithole. It's because they're lightening up, frivolously being sloppy and reckless, doing everything to their convenience and desire, rather than ever doing anything because of the demands of practical reality. And it does really piss me off. There's just no getting around that. That is the greatest of all human vice, is the problem of lightening for personal satisfaction's sake. So that really doesn't work for me. The old lightening up phrase I find incredibly irritating. And I'm really going to be in trouble here. I gotta do something with this. A little bit too. Ice is too hard and too slippery. Oh, my glove got stuck to the damn thing. It's so cold. All right, so I have to make some dirt here. So yeah, but this is about language, about the art of living, almost. And I'm okay with some of that jargon, that kind of perspective, but you're almost not acknowledging the broader context and the fact that it is the vice of the human race, that it exploits every single opportunity to use what you call your extended metaphor to run the fuck away from reality. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the clinging to the God delusion. The whole syndrome is built out of this necessity to make it all more, make the meal more palatable, more comfortable to eat. And I just don't see anything good in that from my perspective. Alright, so far, not too bad. I really don't want to fall in the water. It would really ruin my day. Alright, looks like I'm successful. Careful. Okay. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Well, cold.
Yeah.
Anyway, alright, back to it. Alright, so I don't want to obsess about the language thing, but it really is a big function of this disagreement. So let's get to the part where we do have a real disagreement. How great a physicist Feynman was, whatever. I mean, this whole physics conversation almost gets to be like religion. Mohammed versus Jeebus. Borg versus Einstein. And I have to concede, I definitely am in one side of that argument in terms of where I see the logic existing and where I see the fluffy fucking bullshit existing. Especially modern physicists who are all whifty-difty, wafty-dofty. Their logic is vacant. They're speculating about aliens on other fucking planets when they don't have one shred of evidence. Not one bit of logical probability analysis gives you reason to believe in it. And yet they talk about it like it's a reality. And likewise with your 11 dimensions, or even your fourth dimension, if Einstein talked about it, it was in a sense where he wrote on a bar napkin once. I mean, it wasn't the substance of anything he talked about in terms of real physics. He might have talked about it in terms of speculation. Let's make up some shit, see where it goes. Yeah, but as a reality, as something that has left a fingerprint somewhere, no fucking way. I don't believe that. You're going to have to prove that one. And assume that I should believe it. You are talking like a fundy almost. Like, how can you not believe that? I mean, it's just, everybody knows there's a God. How did we get here? I mean, come on. And like I say, Feynman, you can't use that guy, in my opinion, for much. Because I personally found him to be an obnoxious, egomaniacal, silly person. And yeah, that kind of crap sells, like Carl Sagan, who I personally liked, okay? But I have nothing but contempt for the way he presented science, because he just fluffy-duffied it all over the fucking place. He fucking... I mean, it was as creepy as, Mr. Rogers as a babysitter. But whatever, I won't even get into that shit. Yeah, it's like Teletubbies is the child entertainment. Carl Sagan was to real science. But like I said, you can't deny the social benefit of getting people to at least contemplate their existence in the universe. So even a Swami who talks in la-di-da bullshit might make people think, and that's good. But you got to be really careful, because what they're carrying in their bag is arsenic. And it might have it might add a nice tinge to a drink. It might give it a little pop. But too much of that arsenic and you're dead. So I think there's a real danger with this mushy purple talk shit, and I think if you did it in a context that was a little more explicit about what you're not saying, maybe I wouldn't find it quite as irritating, quite as dangerous as a way of conversation. Yeah, lighten up. I mean, it's just that just says it all to me. That's exactly the problem between you and me. Fuck. No. Yeah, just no. So anyway, more on the dimension stuff. It's just, of course you can extend anything with imagination, but that's all any of this dimension crap is made out of. Imagination. You can, I mean, it's even, there's a really dangerous, use in quantum mechanics of the word vector. And yet it doesn't have anything to do with being a real vector, like in any other part of science. Yet they're using the same word. And it's kind of funny, or ironic, that's sort of what you build extra dimensions out of, is just pulling a vector out of your ass. And saying that this is some overlay. So someone could argue that probability, even though it's a deterministic universe, and there really is no such thing as probability, there is an inevitability everywhere, is a real dimension. But it's a dimension that completely collapses with knowledge. So as soon as you have knowledge, that dimension closes. Just like knowledge closes the ignorance dimension. Or the, what's a better metaphor? Santa Claus disappears with it. Or, the Santa Claus dimension closes. Let me think. It's probably a better way to metaphor it. But anyway, and yes, I'm not opposed to metaphor. It's just that we know metaphor is like the arsenic thing. It's like any other. It's in moderation, and it's easily abused. Oh, sorry about the sun. That was a bad call on my part. Oh shit, it's cold. So anyway, I want to contest that extra dimensions are anything like proven science. They're made up stuff. The fact that you can do math that extends math, you can multiply math. Of course you can. You can probably divide math. You can probably do all kinds of math on math. The very concept of math can probably be mathematically matherized. That doesn't mean it's real. And I would argue that the three known dimensions all have mass, matter, and energy in them. The fourth dimension has nothing. It contributes nothing. Each dimension in the first three dimensions add something to the universe. They add something vital to the reality of the thing. Something you can't miss the impact of the second and third dimension in one dimension, or two dimensions. You can't miss the impact of the third. You can completely find the fourth dimension invisible, sitting in three dimensions. You can find it impossible to find any influence of it, any place where it's anything in that dimension is doing anything. So that's where I say foul the fourth dimension, or seventh dimension, or 400th dimension is a theoretical contrivance where you've taken a function or aspect of reality, like rabbit ears. Okay, you could take the concept of rabbit eerie, okay, and you could dimensionalize it in terms of creating a new vector that where everything else was tied based on how rabbit eerie it was to the rest of these things, and call it a dimension. It's not a dimension. And probability isn't a dimension. Whatever, I keep going through all this stuff. But yeah, I don't buy it. I think your premise, almost your emphaticness that I must accept it, that the evidence is overwhelming somehow, is sort of evidence. Again, a little bit of evidence, but evidence nonetheless that you do have an agenda in here somewhere. That there is a willful hope or want or expectation that there's some kernel of something better or something more elaborate. And I just don't think that is either necessary or demonstrated by the evidence. I think that is the new God. God 3.0. That's the new Jehovah, is the fourth dimension. It's just more of the pseudo scientific flighty-ighty, bibbly-babbly woo-woo that human beings contrive to make it palatable. And I'm obviously the superhero character fighting against that villainry. Yeah. So, no sale here. So cold the critters didn't even come out for their lunch. Yeah. Alright, till next time. Such and so forth and whatnot.